How does moral decision making work? What are the basic elements that go into making a moral decision and also to evaluating a moral decision? In this clip, we're going to look at these things and think together about what all goes into moral decision making. So, according to Catholic teaching, we read about this in the Catechism of the Catholic Church, that there are three distinct sources of morality: the object chosen, the intention of the action, and the circumstances surrounding the action. So if we take each of these in turn, we want to understand what is meant by this language in moral theology. So the object chosen of a moral act is precisely what is done. What exactly is done? If we were to define it, what is being done that's called into question? In negative senses, is there a breaking of a commandment? Is there a crime deserving punishment? So something like, was there murder? Was there adultery? Was there stealing? Was there lying? Was there cheating? These kinds of things which have evidence. What was the act that was accomplished in the moral act? What exactly is done? Can we describe it? Can we talk about it in an objective sense? So if I were to say, steal a box of animal crackers from the store, we would define the act as such. I were to go into the store and I were to take the animal crackers and perhaps hide them and exit the store without paying for them. So therefore, I have stolen the animal crackers. So it's not only that the animal crackers were the object chosen in the act, but it's trying to define the act itself. Stealing happened, and it's rightly called stealing in the case that I could have paid, but I chose not to pay. I stole it. The second is the intention of the action. What is the intention of the moral agent? Do they intend to do the deed, or is there something accidental happening within the act? The intention also comes into play in determining the morality of the act. So with the animal crackers example, if I go into the store and take the animal crackers, what if I'm living in abject poverty and I'm trying to make an honest living and I'm being discriminated against, and so I'm starving to death, and maybe I have children and my children are starving to death, and I'm being treated completely unjustly and not in a human way. I'm doing everything I can to procure the needs for my family, but without avail. And there's this store that's prosperous, that's doing well, and uh, and so perhaps my taking the animal crackers has a bit different connotation if I'm trying to get them in order to uh, feed my child, and I have zero money. So it's not so much a nefarious act as it is. There's some even degree of virtue trying to meet certain basic needs. And so perhaps even the definition of what is happening may be revisable in a case like this. So I'm just trying to use a basic example to try to make sense of each of these more abstract theoretical points. So the intention of the action comes into play. And finally, the circumstances of the action. What circumstances are surrounding the action? So say when I took the animal crackers, I was maybe drunk on alcohol and I wasn't in my right state of mind, and I grabbed something and took them without paying. Maybe I didn't even remember I put them in my pockets, or maybe my intentionality was blurred. So all these different circumstances can enter into play too. In that case, it would raise the moral question of drunkenness, prior to the act of taking the animal crackers without paying. So these are the various elements of moral decision making and how we would evaluate a moral act in terms of its moral goodness or lack thereof. In addition to these elements or sources of morality, there's the fundamental concept of conscience. What is going on within the moral agents? I really like this picture depicting conscience as the voice of another within the self, namely the voice of God within the self, as John Henry Newman talks about this. So, thinking of the moral compass, what is right and what is wrong. I don't get to invent due north. This is a given. So conscience um, keeps us connected to natural law and moreover divine law. Conscience, as the word suggests, is having moral knowledge based on what is given in advance. That which teaches us to do good and avoid evil. That which bears witness to the authority of truth in reference to the supreme good, which is God. It's a judgment of reason, and conscience must be properly formed by virtuous people, by virtuous teaching. And so the higher degree of an environment of virtue, the better a conscience will be formed and empower one to do good and avoid evil. The last point of this short presentation has to do with virtue. Virtue from the Latin word virtus, which means strength, or even the smaller root word vir, which you could translate as man. So to have strength, to have moral strength, is to be virtuous. And there's four cardinal or even natural virtues: prudence, justice, fortitude, temperance. And there's three theological virtues. We read this list in 1 Corinthians chapter 13 when Paul writes, "And so faith, hope, and love remain. The greatest of these is love." And we call these theological virtues because they involve special infused grace or a gift given directly by God for them to be at work within the moral life. So altogether, for Catholic teaching, there's a unity of the virtues. And so if we grow in one, we're growing at the same time in the rest. If we decline in one, we're declining at the same time in the rest. So there's a unity of the virtues that are really integrated within the moral life. And this is just by way of introduction. Much more can be said about this and read about this, but here they are, the four cardinal virtues, the three theological virtues.